The basic question here, Kyle, is how does a user get the most out of this software? We hear of a lot of warehouses buying slotting packages. They never get around to utilizing them. They're kind of obsessed with the shiny thing of the moment. How do you make sure that doesn't happen here?
Yeah. So I'll kind of answer that in reverse order. So we've definitely seeked to design a solution that anyone can use. I mean, I highlighted some of the usability aspects a couple times. We don't want this to have to sit in the industrial engineer's office, right? That's how I think a lot of these develop Dust is only a certain subset of people are trained on it. It's a training and consulting time is required to really understand and build out the model. So we taking some of that friction out in our design. At least I like to think. How someone gets the most out of it by using it, right? So request recommendations, try to be opportunistic and use them. Use the solution as much as possible. That's how you're going to get the most ROI out of it. Um, Waiting 3 months to turn it on and use it or make a couple spots is not what it's necessarily designed for. It's going to be better the more often I use it and the more I continuously optimize my warehouse. So as things change, new products come in, seasons change, the best bang for the buck I can do is to run the heck out of it.
Kyle, there have been many tried and true techniques over the years of addressing the whole problem of slotting. We've had first in, first out. We've had last in, first out. We've had ABC designations indicating inventory turnover rates, things like that. All of that, I guess, has worked as far as it goes. But again, as you point out, a lot of it is manual in execution. So how is this solution better than doing it with Excel or other manual means, even based on those techniques that, for their own purposes, have worked up to now? What do the algorithms take into account that these other things don't?
Yeah, I think a lot of it. So I mentioned one that our data scientists have hit on a few times is affinity. So it's really hard to figure out affinity and take advantage of it in something like Excel or a more simple tool, right? I can say velocity and get everything into an A mover slot, but within my A movers, one I could make too many of them, right? And now I have things spread out. I could cause congestion by funneling things to too close to a small of an area. There's a lot of there's so many variables. Like I showed that little word cloud of all the different factors that come into it. It's a multivariate problem. So doing something with a simple like, okay, get my highest movers to my highest slot is just a little more limited than I think we can go and continue to improve here. So affinity is definitely the big one. Replenishment costs. My One of my other solution consultants, a principal engineer here, Ron, always talks about the idea of flow, right? I don't want to look at product velocity necessarily, but cubic flow. The real world example is that it's during COVID, there was no toilet paper on the shelves, right? That's not because suddenly every single person bought way more toilet paper. It's just harder to restock because it's bigger. And so if two more people buy toilet paper, it clears out the shelves, and then he causes panic. So making sure you have enough cubic volume to match the velocity as well and getting that right sizing right. All of these things are really hard to do with simple packages. And then to continually optimize on it, you really need machine learning and other techniques to help you out.
Mhm. Well, there are, however, various types of storage strategies that must be put into place in various warehouses with their own unique needs. There may be product zones. There may be the need for temperature-controlled storage. There may be security considerations for highly regulated product. How do you account for all those in your model?
Yeah. So the one of the main outputs of a sliding project when we're setting this up for a customer is the compatibility matrix. And that's what we work with the customer on and trying to figure out and suss out those things. So essentially, we can have an ever changing or categorized compatibility matrix to take into account those various things. So when we don't want to rely on simple slot size to be a determinant whether a product should go into this slot. So we can make that matrix as complex or as simple as we need. We might say, very simple customer, they got no freezer, all the products are the same size. Very basic example, that compatibility matrix is going to be real straightforward. It's going to only take a very little amount of time to work out. But the more complex that model gets into, and then you start to realize, man, I couldn't really do this without a real model helping me out figure this out. Or if I were using a more complex solution, and I add a new section of the warehouse, how am I going to set this up? Do I need to pay a consultant to come and like figure out how to add this into my slot software package? Well, no, now we can just add it to the compatibility matrix, or you guys can update it on your side depending on how we set that up, and we're good to go.
One of the most compelling features that you described in your presentation, Kyle, is the flexibility and the agility of this system, its ability to handle change. And you mentioned the idea of modeling, and especially what if scenarios. Could you talk a little bit more about that as a digital exercise? I know these days when we think of what if, we hear a lot about digital twins and things like that. Is that a feature here, and how does that work exactly?
Yeah, so the what if is great. I think it's good for a few reasons. One, I mentioned the like forecast aspect of it. So if I know a product has been like flying off the shelf, someday, one day, but maybe I don't have forecasting built in, I can see how that is going to affect my. I can quickly see how that's going to affect my productivity. I can do the what if to say, should I move this to the front? Which product should I move out? Does this need a better slot? And I can have a user directed function. Another thing is simply like people like we know if we're getting used to machine learning and AI tools, I think people are still trying to get their arms around it. So an ability for a user to say, hey, does this make sense, to almost validate the tool? Like, hey,
Yeah.
I know this should be in the front. And if the system agrees, it almost helps you validate that kind of stuff as well. So I definitely see people using it more first up as they get used to this system and develop trust with it, for sure. But it just allows users some control, so it's not just a black box that they send off things to.
Okay, thank you.